Shalom from Jerusalem. I'm Jonathan Hesson, and this is TV7 Israel's At War update. And in today's edition, we're going to discuss a whole variety of countries, the various challenges at hand, and what needs to be done in that context. And on that and more, let's initially introduce our guest for the day, Brigadier General in Reserve Yaron Rosen, formerly the IDF Chief of Cyber Staff and Israel Air Force Commander, as well as a fighter pilot. Alongside him, retired Brigadier General Mark Kimmett, formerly an Assistant Secretary of State for Political and Military Affairs, and last but not least, Brigadier General in Reserve Doron Gavish, the commander of the Israeli Air Force Task Force for Air and Missile Defense. And it's a pleasure to have all three of you joining us today. And I'd like to start with you, General Kimmett. We're seeing the Islamic Republic of Iran is seemingly very concerned with the messaging coming out of Washington, but at the same time, they continue to climb up a tree when we're talking about unwillingness to negotiate so long as the maximum pressure campaign is in effect. And all this is actually creating is it's fueling additional tension and additional sanctions. So where are we heading from here?
Well, as you know, President Trump sent a letter to the Ayatollah saying, let's give peace a chance, just climb down from your nuclear ladder. I think this is going to be a sequence of make a request, more pressure. There's plenty more that can be done in the maximum pressure campaign, push towards a negotiation, and then we'll see what happens from there.
And broader on Iran, we see also China, Russia joining with Iran in Beijing to discuss the nuclear proliferation of Iran specifically and attempts to somehow coordinate their response to the American and Western approach, if I may call it that, alongside also joint maneuvers. We see a naval exercise in the Persian Gulf and other aspects that are raising questions about where are we heading from here.
Yeah, I think that any notion that Russia and China want to see a nuclear-armed Iran is probably a fiction more than anything else. Nobody wants to see further nuclear proliferation. Nobody's as vulnerable as Russia and China. So let's hope that the Russians and the Chinese may talk in public about support, but in private, tell Iran to knock it off.
Absolutely. General Rosen, I'd like to hear your take on that.
Yeah, I think we're seeing, a few layers of credible and uncredible threats in a way. As General Kimmett well described, I think that Russia's interests are elsewhere. In Ukraine and in Europe, and dealing with resolving the getting out the most out of the war in Ukraine. And China has other focal areas such as Taiwan and the South China Sea. So another layer of conflict, Iran being in the middle of that, is just not very credible for them to, stand in some kind of summit and say, yeah, we support Iran. But actually, I think the maximum pressure campaign will push eventually Iran to the nuclear discussion table. And with that, the other side of it, on the credible threat side, I think that Israel and the U.S. are playing the other option, the military strike option. If diplomacy fails, well, we will go and take action to prevent Iran from reaching the nuclear breakout. I think these two things together lead me to believe that eventually the campaign, the maximum pressure campaign, and the military option will push Iran eventually to some kind of diplomatic discussion.
Absolutely. General Gavish, I'd like to hear your take on that as well. And also mention that Ayatollah Ali Khamenei spoke earlier this week, actually yesterday, to a group of his followers, during the course of which he highlighted that in the event that the United States and its partners, as he put it, namely Israel and others, launch a strike against Iran's nuclear infrastructure, Iran will know how to respond. And naturally, I know preparations are taking place across the region and beyond with regard to the Iranian aspects. But from what you're able to tell us, to what degree are the Iranians truly vulnerable and concerned following the penetration of the October 26th attack that really put Iran in a position where it doesn't have surface to air capabilities to confront any incoming strikes?
Well, Jonathan, first of all, I think that it's really important to say from the Israeli point of view and from the Israeli interest, Israel said it all along the time that we cannot allow ourselves to have weapons of mass destruction by the hands of our enemies. So this is something that we always said it. Now it looks that we are getting to a point that decisions have to be made. The other thing which I think is important to highlight, and this is probably one of the main lesson learned from the 7th of October, is that when we're looking on the Israeli national strategy, it is not really redesigned yet, but I think there is an understanding that one of the pillars that have to be part of our national strategy is denial. Meaning denying from our enemy to have any capabilities that could heavily harm Israel. Of course, terrorist organizations, but also others. And we see Israel reacting along this strategy in all the different arenas. So I think this is something that we have really to highlight at the beginning on the strategic level. Going down to the operational level, for sure, Iran was hit quite heavily. His air defense capabilities are completely different from what they've been before this attack, so they are vulnerable. But they do have some other capabilities that they could apply if they would like to. So this is why we are already also in the defense. And all the options are in the table. So we hope that things would be at the end of the day discussed on the on the negotiation tables and not in other tables. But everything is optional.
Hope for a peaceful resolution, nevertheless prepare for war. General Kimmett, naturally, President Trump is doubling down on his position. And if we divert somewhat westward into neighboring Iraq, to what degree does Iran's precarious state of affairs impact its proxy, Hashd-e-Shaabi, or the constellation of the various militias? And now that the extension of the waiver on the maximum pressure campaign on energy input by the Iranians in Iraq has not been extended, to what degree are the Iraqis now proactive in diversifying those activities? I saw a 3-year transition in the cards from what was stated by the leadership in Iraq, but nonetheless, are there already potential partners to deliver the needs of the Iraqi people?
Oh, certainly. Inside of Iraq, there's tremendous amount of activity from foreign countries, not only in terms of refining the crude, but also bringing in the turbines, bringing in the generators to try to increase the electrical production. Not coming fast enough, should have been done years ago. But I think that Sudani and his administration fully understand that under Trump, things are not going to get better in terms of energy from Iran, so they need to start focusing on doing it themselves.
Let's shift gears to the only standing proxy, namely in Yemen. General Hossein, when we're looking to the south, the Houthis have once again blocked, to a certain degree, of course, the strategic Strait of Bab el-Mandeb. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I think, in public, that's a story they're telling. I'm not sure how much they will actually do right now, mainly on Israeli or Israeli connected shipping going through the straits. And I think that when and if something happens, and I think we can assume that something will happen in that, again, connected to Israel, I think that it will be a good point for the new administration to prove that things have changed, whether it is giving Israel again a window of an opportunity to attack the Yemenis after they do whatever they do, or on the other hand, the U.S. will respond this time in a very different way than it did in the last year or so. So I think this will be an opportunity to maybe decapitate the sort of last somehow standing Iranian proxy. And I don't think right now they are a huge threat. I think they are a threat. It's impossible to not really take them into account, but it is something that will need to be dealt with once they act in the Straits of Bab el-Mandeb.
General Gavish, the best defense is a proper offensive maneuver, but nonetheless, within the preparations to confront the Houthis, should all options be on the table also there when we're talking about not only potentially confronting Houthi targets, or Ansar Allah to be exact, but also to say in the event that something happens from Yemen, Iran will also bear the brunt?
Well, Jonathan, I think that if something would happen with Iran, I'm sorry, with the Houthis, I'm not sure that Iran would be part of it in any way. They were not, at least in the past. But of course, we should be ready for everything. But going back to the Houthis, we again and again we have to remind everyone that this is not only an Israeli issue. This is an international issue. This is a regional issue. Egypt, Saudi, others, and so the solution should be also a coalition solution, and not something which is only Israel. From pure Israeli point of view in the defense of Israel, we have to remember that we are still working according to the known strategy of attack, alert, active defense, passive defense. And this, if we're looking at least to the past, really brought us very good results against the missiles that were shot from the Houthis. They shot tens of missiles. Unfortunately, two of them penetrated, but the vast majority of them were intercepted. And also the UAVs that were shot toward Israel, and we're talking about hundreds of them. And this was done together by Israel, by the coalition forces led by the United States, mainly the United States assets that took part of this. So the military assets in these regions are ready also for that in the defense. And once again, all the options are on the table also in the offense.
Absolutely. General Kimmett, U.S. Central Command allegedly conducted, if I may, various strikes in Yemen with pinpoint targeting of various radar capabilities and others. The CENTCOM did not come out with a acknowledgement of its responsibility, but nevertheless, everybody assumes that the Americans were part of it, since Israel did not undertake that activity. What can you tell us about that, and to what degree is the United States, which is actively pursuing a very aggressive approach to building a target bank, to what degree is it resolved, and is it planning to showcase its resolve, as General Zenas mentioned earlier?
Well, Jonathan, I don't think the issue of resolve is in question with regards to the Houthis, and nor is it simply a regional problem in terms of what's happening in the Red Sea. That has international implications. It fundamentally comes down to lack of intelligence. There's been no reluctance to attack any target outside in the desert, or most of these rockets and missiles and drones are fired from, but we just can't find them. I think they have learned over the years, the Houthis, that how to hide themselves, how to shoot and scoot, and how to take advantage of dispersion. They learned that by fighting the UAE and Saudi Arabia for years and years. So this is fundamentally an issue of lack of intelligence and extended response times, nothing more.
So what should be done?
Get better intelligence and get better response time. Now, of course, that's what I'm saying is the United States is doing as much as it can to attack the targets uh, in Yemen, plain and simple.
I see. Well, shifting gears to Lebanon. General Lazin, your take on that?
Yeah, I think Lebanon is actually sort of a light in this regional darkness, if you will. I think that Lebanon is, while we are seeing how it restructures its security leadership to restore stability after everything that happened in after Israel basically evaporated Hezbollah. Uh, Now is the time for Lebanon to restructure itself, and I think that when I say it's a light in the regional darkness, what I mean is mainly shifting the focus from everyone's focusing on the Palestinian conflict, which is a very important thing, naturally. But if time and again it's not succeeding, it's because there is a big, big problem with the Palestinians, and we maybe need to shift focus to create some kind of other anchor of stability. And I think Lebanon is the answer to that. And I think that if the Saudis broker with the Lebanese some kind of deal with Israel, I think that's where the stability to the rest of the region might come out. To Syria also needs this stability on its flank. It has its own problems right now, restructuring itself. So it's sort of a little Syria in that sense. And Lebanon can work with its European and US partners, with the Saudis, and with the Israelis to create something which is different from the past. I know it's it's something which is outside of the box, but that's what we need right now. We need thinking outside of the box strategically to try to create some kind of momentum through Lebanon.
Very interesting indeed. General Gavish, discussions are ongoing between the United States, France, Lebanon, and Israel, particularly the IDF's delegation, which are seeking to reach some sort of an understanding. It's just a start of a very long process, of course. But is there substance to this discussion, or is it just a attempt to project a certain sense of stability for other mechanisms to play out?
But first of all, I really agree with my colleague, General Yarozen, that there is a light if we're looking on the potential of what could be happening in Lebanon. And one of the other things which is interesting to see is that there is such a huge difference between rhetorics, what is happening on the ground, and what Israel is doing for its neighbors. What Israel did for Lebanon, this is what they couldn't do against the Hezbollah. So we are really hoping that they would take this opportunity and would do what is necessary to do in order to be again Lebanese controlling Lebanon. By the way, it is the same on the West Bank. Israel is fighting the Hamas, which if we wouldn't do it, probably the Hamas would be growing until the position that he would take over the Palestinian Authority. So rhetorics are different, but Israel is basically really helping our neighbors. Going back to Lebanon, from the Israeli point of view, and we have to remember that everything which we're talking about Lebanon, but it is linked to Syria. Because the Hezbollah will continuously try to rearm themselves and so on. So I think that from the Israeli point of view, and this would be also helpful, as I mentioned before, for the Lebanese, is to continuously press and making sure that we are containing the Hezbollah, that is not being rearmed, that we are weakening as an organization. And I hope that the two vectors, the military one and the political one, will really become one big factor with the help of United States, France, Saudi, and other which are Western oriented. So let's be optimistic if we're looking toward Lebanon, but then from the other side, we have to remember to be very strong, eye on the ball, as you like to say, Jonathan, and making sure that nothing is growing that we don't want under our hands.
We don't have very much time left, but I will note this. I think it's too early to eulogize Hezbollah. The Iranians are not going to let their proxy in Lebanon, which still has a massive fighting force. It might be a headless chicken, but it's still a massive fighting force, well equipped, well trained, with plenty of knowledge and ready to sacrifice, something that the Iranians do not have in other theaters necessarily. And therefore, this is one point. And a second point, yesterday, during a trilateral summit by Greece, Cyprus, and Israel, Jerusalem's top diplomat, Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar, came out and stated that Turkey is allowing the Iranians to transfer money through Istanbul into Lebanon for Hezbollah, earmarked for Hezbollah. That is something that I think Beirut needs to discuss with Turkey directly. And, of course, with the latest tensions between Tehran and Ankara, let's see whether or not the fact that they're both rivals of Israel will not necessarily continue to fuel this alignment in confrontation with Israel on a regional scale. But General Kimmett, I'd like to hear your take on that.
Well, if you're talking about Lebanon, I share your concern. I don't see a light at the end of the tunnel. As long as Hezbollah still has a role in the government, an accepted role inside the government, and we all know that governments come and go quite quickly inside of Lebanon. Look, we all want things to move on and improve inside of Lebanon, but I agree with your point. They've still got a very, very capable force that is rebuilding right now. It may not have the support of Iran directly, and it's going to be more difficult, but they are, as long as they remain embedded in the political process inside of Lebanon, I don't think we're going to see them go anywhere anytime soon.
Morgan Ortegas, the deputy U.S. envoy for the Middle East, traveled to Lebanon this week, during the course of which he met with President Joseph Aoun. They had a very candid conversation on this and more, and hopefully those challenges will be met, since we are very hopeful for a stable Lebanon that will also root out the deep-rooted corruption there. Go ahead, General.
Yeah, I would just simply say, if we accept the fact that a terrorist organization like Hezbollah can be an accepted member and partner inside the government, then perhaps we should expect Hamas to be able to do the same thing inside of Gaza.
We have 3 minutes left, 1 minute for each. Please keep it in those terms because it is net, not brute. General Rosen, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I just want to add on Lebanon that, Lebanon is a conundrum and will be a conundrum, and the way the government is formed is, by the different the Shiite, the Sunni, the Druze, the Maroon Christians. So it is a very complex country. But having said that, I think that if we let Saudis influence Lebanon and take over, instead of letting the Turks through Syria do it, if we let Saudi Arabia reshape the region, it's much better for everyone than the other option. Again, sometimes it's two, bad options, but this is the lesser. And I think this will play much better for the Palestinian cause, for the Israeli, Lebanese cause, and might create some kind of light at the end of the tunnel for the region.
General Gavish, maybe you touch on Gaza?
Well, I'll be very short on Gaza. I really hope that we'll see the hostages and deal will be part of it. But you gave me less than 1 minute, so I will add that although we are talking about all those challenges, we live here in Israel in this duality that if you look out, we have it is deep winter, but it's 25 degrees, very nice outside. People are celebrating Purim. And we also trying to live, and people are living quite good, although we have so many challenges. And this is what I hope for future, to be stronger inside, resilience, people as we are, and we still have some things to do in our region.
You mentioned 25 degrees outside Celsius, of course, we're talking about, which is quite hot for a summer in March. Nevertheless, it also is a threat of drought on a regional scale, something that needs to be taken also into account. General Kimmett?
Yeah, I'd continue to watch Syria with a little jaundiced eye. We've got al-Shara making agreements with the SDF in northeast Syria. That looks good. They've written somewhat of a constitution. That looks good. But if we're seeing what's happening with the Alawis over in the Latakia area, with the slaughter going on over there, it's still an open question. Still shaky there. I think we need to keep an eye on it. The problems aren't going away anytime soon, nor are the solutions arriving anytime soon.
Indeed. Well, actually, following the signing of the Constitution and the publication thereof, the SDF came out and stated that it does not align with the arrangement that was signed upon between SDF and the al-Julani regime in Damascus. It seems like he is pursuing a 5-year heavily Islamist regime, which is also a signal to all minorities in the region that we're hoping for an inclusive arrangement under, hopefully, UN Security Council Resolution 2254. That is not something that al-Julani would like to see. This is all the time that we have for today. Nonetheless, I'd like to immediately thank General Kimmett, General Rosen, and General Kavish for all of your valuable insights. And I'd like to thank all of you at home as well. Until our next edition, from here in Jerusalem, Shalom.